Most people don't lose their week halfway through. They lose it in the first 10 minutes of Monday. They wake up reactive, scattered, already behind, letting notifications lead before their own thoughts ever get a chance to breathe. If you've ever found yourself drained before 9 a.m., scrolling, rushing, trying to remember what day it is, this message is for you. Because how you begin your week is not just a habit. It's a decision. It's the moment you silently tell life, "I'm in charge," or you quietly surrender your energy to everything but yourself. This isn't about creating the perfect routine. It's about reclaiming the first hour before the world speaks. The truth is, your week doesn't need more tasks. It needs a stronger tone. And that tone is set by how you show up on Monday morning, with intention or by default. In this video, I'll walk you through the 7 principles that build a calm, focused, and self-led week. Not one based on hype or pressure, but quiet clarity and consistent action. If you're tired of starting strong and burning out by Wednesday, or if you've been searching for a way to build momentum that actually lasts, stay with me. And if any part of this speaks to you, don't forget to subscribe for more content like this and share in the comments below. What's one thing you want to change about how you begin your week? Let's build this together. Quietly, powerfully. Starting now. 1. Don't touch your phone before you touch your life. I remember waking up one Monday morning, still half asleep, and grabbing my phone before I even sat up. I didn't think twice. Just a quick scroll, I told myself, just to see the time, the weather, maybe glance at the news. But within minutes, I was pulled into the stream. Unanswered emails, group chats buzzing, breaking headlines filled with stress, curated lives that looked far more put together than mine. And by the time I stood up, I wasn't in my life anymore. I was in theirs. I hadn't even taken a full breath, and I already felt behind. Not physically, but mentally. I had handed over the direction of my day to algorithms and alerts before I'd given my own thoughts a moment to surface. And in that moment, something quiet but clear hit me. Your phone doesn't just steal your time. It steals the tone of your entire week. We often talk about building discipline and structure, about creating routines that lead to clarity, control, and peace. But the foundation of that structure is not built in the middle of a chaotic day. It's built in the first moments of your Monday. That small window between sleep and engagement is the only clean slate you truly get. And the truth is, most people are handing it away voluntarily. You might say it's just a few minutes, but those minutes are shaping your inner direction. If the first thing you consume is someone else's opinion, their urgency, their drama, or their highlight reel, then your focus, your energy, and your presence are already compromised. You're no longer beginning your week with intention. You're starting it in reaction mode, scattered and dependent on outside validation to feel anchored. It's not about demonizing technology. It's about reclaiming the mental real estate you keep surrendering without realizing it. Think about it. If your Monday begins with distraction, how can you expect to end your Friday with clarity? If your first hour is reactive, emotional, and fragmented, then everything that follows is just an echo of that instability. And we normalize it. We normalize the rush, the fog, the low-grade anxiety that hums in the background of our days. But underneath it, what's really happening is that we've lost the habit of checking in with ourselves. We've stopped asking the most important questions. What do I want this week to mean? What kind of presence do I want to bring into my work, my relationships, my thoughts? Who am I choosing to become this week? These questions aren't self-help cliches. They're recalibration tools. Because no matter what chaos is waiting out there, your inner tone, your focus, your boundaries, your intention is still yours to set. But it requires space and silence and courage. Courage to pause before reacting. Courage to face your own life before indulging in someone else's. You don't need to meditate for an hour or write 5 pages in a journal. You just need to decide, I won't start my week with noise. I won't let algorithms set the pace of my mind. I won't hand my emotional energy to the internet before I've even spoken to myself. That's where the real Monday mindset reset begins. Not with a motivational quote or a productivity hack, but with a deliberate act of restraint. That's how you stop reacting to your week and start taking control of it. When you reclaim your attention, You begin to see your life more clearly. You notice the little irritations before they spiral. You catch the creeping self-doubt before it turns into paralysis. You're not emotionally drained by noon because you protected your mental energy in the morning. You're no longer tolerating distraction as a normal part of your day. You're choosing clarity, presence, and direction as non-negotiables. That's the quiet strength behind every productive week. It doesn't come from doing more. It comes from starting with less noise, less input, less pressure to perform for others before you've shown up for yourself. If this sounds small, consider this. One tiny shift, like not grabbing your phone first thing, can change how you carry yourself. It can build the foundation for deeper self-discipline, stronger boundaries, and more consistent habits. And over time, those habits don't just shape your week, they shape your identity. You start to trust yourself again. You begin your week with clarity instead of confusion, with peace instead of panic. That's not a luxury, that's a decision. One thing you get to make every Monday. So the next time your alarm goes off and your hand reaches toward that glowing screen, stop, breathe, let the world wait, reclaim that first moment. Because how you begin your week isn't just how you win your Monday, it's how you build the kind of life that's led by your own values, not someone else's urgency. And that life starts right here. Before the scroll, before the noise, before anything else, choose to touch your life first. 2. Ask yourself, what have you been tolerating for too long? A friend of mine once told me, I don't know why I'm so tired all the time. He was a good man, hardworking, responsible, the kind of guy who never said no to a favor, never missed a deadline, never stopped moving. He blamed it on poor sleep, on work pressure, even on aging. But the more we talked, the more it became obvious. He wasn't just tired from activity, he was tired from emotional weight. The weight of saying yes when he wanted to say no. The weight of keeping up appearances. The weight of carrying people, routines, and expectations that no longer served him. He wasn't just physically drained. He was spiritually exhausted from all the things he had been tolerating quietly for far too long. That conversation stuck with me, because most of us are carrying something similar. Not heavy enough to collapse under, but just heavy enough to slow us down, cloud our clarity, and dull our energy. It hides in plain sight. You tell yourself you're fine, you say you'll deal with it next week, but next week becomes next month, and before long, you don't even notice that it's there. It becomes part of your normal. But just because something is familiar doesn't mean it's healthy. And just because you've learned to survive with it doesn't mean it belongs in the life you're trying to build. Each Monday offers a small but powerful opportunity, a mental reset, a quiet window to be brutally honest with yourself before the chaos begins. And that honesty often starts with one question. What have I been tolerating for too long? Maybe it's the way you speak to yourself when no one's listening, little jabs disguised as jokes, quiet assumptions that you're not enough. Maybe it's a relationship that drains you more than it builds you, where the connection is based more on guilt than growth. Maybe it's a routine that steals your time and gives you nothing back, scrolling endlessly, binging, numbing, running. You may not call it suffering, but if it makes you shrink, silence yourself, or delay your progress, it's stealing from you just the same. The issue isn't just the discomfort, it's the slow erosion of your self-respect. Every time you allow something into your life that goes against your values, your goals, or your peace of mind, you send a signal to your brain. This is acceptable. This is what we tolerate. And your nervous system listens. Your energy adjusts. Your standards subtly lower. Not all at once, but over time. And the worst part? You don't even realize it's happening. You just feel more tired, less motivated, more disconnected from the person you thought you were becoming. The moment you name what you've been tolerating, you start to reverse that erosion. You stop running. You reclaim power, not by fixing everything at once, but by drawing one clear boundary. And that boundary starts in the mind. You don't need to announce it. You don't need a big confrontation. You just need to decide, this doesn't belong anymore. That alone will shift how you carry yourself through the week. Because when you stop allowing what weakens you, you start making space for what strengthens you. Sometimes it's not even other people. Sometimes the thing you're tolerating is your own pattern. The way you keep delaying what matters. The way you convince yourself that discomfort is always bad. The way you overthink for so long that your momentum dies in the process. And the fix isn't to hustle harder, it's to get clearer. Clarity is what cuts through the noise. It's what allows you to say this isn't fatigue, it's friction, and to do something about it. Without clarity, your week is just a loop. With clarity, it becomes a ladder. That's why Monday matters. Not because it's magical, but because it offers the mental clean slate most people waste. They jump in without pause. They run without recalibrating. And in that rush, they carry the weight of last week's tolerations into a new chapter. You don't need to do that anymore. You can sit still, breathe, and ask the hard question. What's the one thing I've been putting up with that no longer fits the life I'm building? Not 10 things, just one. Name it, write it, face it. It could be that friend who only calls when they need something. It could be the hour of sleep you keep sacrificing for mindless entertainment. It could be the voice in your head that whispers, don't aim too high. Whatever it is, the cost is real. You're not just losing time, you're losing alignment. You're losing the peace that comes from living in truth. And the moment you stop tolerating what drains you, your entire direction shifts. You're no longer drifting. You're leading. Not because life got easier, but because you stopped making excuses for the parts of it that keep you stuck. This week, you don't need more goals. You need one brave moment of honesty. Look at your life with clear eyes. Listen to the small frustrations you've been brushing off, and decide that they're not small anymore. Decide that they matter, because you matter. That's how strong weeks begin. That's how strong people are built. Quietly, intentionally, one untolerated thing at a time. 3. Decide how you're going to show up today. Picture this. It's Monday morning and you've barely woken up. There's no plan, no intention, just the blur of habit. You scroll your phone, rush your coffee, and reply to emails while brushing your teeth. Then a passive-aggressive message from a coworker lands in your inbox, and suddenly your energy drops. You feel defensive, irritated, and off. And before you've even stepped out the door, your mind is clouded, your presence fragmented. Why? Because you didn't choose how to show up, the world did it for you. This is what happens when you walk into your week without making a decision about who you're going to be. You give your power away to chance, to noise, to the first external pressure that enters your space. And yet you had a choice. You always do. The moment your eyes open, you can choose how you'll carry yourself through the day. You can lead, or you can be led. You can respond, or you can react. This choice isn't about performance. It's not about pretending to be someone you're not. It's about alignment. It's about deciding which version of you gets to lead the day, the grounded one or the scattered one. And it's not a matter of who you feel like being, because feelings are fickle. It's about who you choose to be. That one decision, made before the noise of the world interrupts, can protect your focus and your energy more than any productivity hack ever will. And what most people don't realize is that emotional self-defense doesn't start in conflict. It starts in preparation. It starts with mental clarity, with personal leadership. If you wait until life tests you to decide how you want to show up, you've already lost your footing. But if you set the tone first, if you quietly say, "Today I lead myself," then everything else that happens becomes something you respond to, not something that controls you. Think about the days when you handled chaos calmly, not because it wasn't hard, but because you were steady. Those days didn't happen by accident. They happened because, consciously or not, you decided who you were before the world asked. And that decision changes everything. It shifts how you speak, how you move, and how you think. It anchors your presence. You stop shrinking from pressure. You stop reacting to drama. You stop carrying other people's chaos as if it's yours to fix. That's the strength of internal direction. And it starts with a question most people never ask. Who am I going to be today? Ask it before the meetings, before the messages, before you pour into others. Because if you don't, the environment will define your energy. You'll become what the room wants, not what you've chosen. And over time, that erodes your identity. You start doubting your goals, your voice, your values, not because they're wrong, but because you didn't give them a chance to lead. Clarity is not something you stumble into. It's something you set on purpose. And it's not loud. It doesn't come from shouting affirmations or forcing a good mood. It comes from one quiet internal agreement. I am responsible for how I carry myself. You don't need to know how the day will unfold. You just need to know who you are when it does. That's the foundation of emotional discipline. And discipline doesn't mean force. It means commitment to your chosen standard. It means showing up with patience even when irritation knocks. It means choosing peace over panic, presence over distraction, direction over drift. And yes, there will be moments where your emotions don't agree. You'll feel the old reflexes rise, the urge to defend, to shut down, to escape. But that's where the decision holds. That's where it works. Because you already made it. You have already chosen. When you live like this, your confidence grows. Not because everything goes right, but because you trust yourself to stay upright when things go wrong. You don't crumble under small things anymore. You don't confuse urgency with importance. And that shift, that internal steadiness, starts showing in every room you walk into. People notice it, even if you never say a word. It's the energy of someone who knows their direction. Someone who protects their energy and doesn't beg for peace. They build it daily. So tomorrow, before you reach for your phone, before you let the world in, ask the question, how will I show up today? Then leave the answer. Move like it, speak like it, think like it. You don't have to broadcast it. You don't have to be perfect. You just have to be intentional. Because when you decide how you'll show up before the day begins, the chaos loses its grip. You are no longer reacting to the world. You are leading yourself through it. And that decision, made quietly, consistently, is how strong weeks begin. It's how strong lives are built. One choice, one morning, one mindset at a time. 4. Write one promise and never break it again. You don't need another grand resolution. You don't need a new system, a vision board, or a complicated morning routine to prove something. What you need, honestly, is to stop lying to yourself. Because the truth is, the most powerful form of personal transformation doesn't begin with 10 goals. It begins with one promise. One simple, specific, personal promise that you make in silence. No performance, no applause, just you, your word, and the decision to stop being the person who always backs out when it gets hard. That's the line that divides self-doubt from self-respect. That's where your identity starts to rebuild, not when you feel motivated, but when you make a quiet, clear commitment and keep it. Even when it's hard. Especially when it's hard. We break promises to ourselves all the time. Small things at first. You said you'd sleep earlier. You didn't. You said you'd stop texting that person. You didn't. You said you'd go for that run, read that book, skip that distraction, just for 1 week. But then life got in the way. Or your mood shifted. Or you told yourself, I'll try again Monday. The problem isn't that you failed. The problem is that every time you back away from a promise to yourself, you chip away at something deeper, your trust. You start believing less in your own words. And over time, you stop expecting anything real from yourself. You want progress, but deep down, you don't trust your own follow-through anymore. And when that trust erodes, even the smallest goals feel like mountains. That's why you don't need a list. You need a vow. A vow you don't break. Not because it's easy, but because it's yours. Because keeping your word to yourself is the foundation of quiet strength. The kind that doesn't need to shout. The kind that doesn't fade after one good week. You build discipline, not by chasing motivation, but by practicing consistency, even when no one sees. Especially when no one sees. That's where real power lives. In the moments when it's not convenient, when no one is cheering, when quitting feels justified, and you still choose to stay with it. But it starts with just one. One promise. One line you don't cross. Not 10, not 50, just one standard that you decide is non-negotiable. Maybe it's waking up at the same time every day no matter what. Maybe it's journaling for 5 minutes every night. Maybe it's cutting out social media in the first hour of the day. It doesn't matter what it is, as long as it matters to you. As long as you know that keeping it will begin to shift the way you see yourself. Because that's what happens. With each kept promise, something internal shifts. You start carrying yourself differently. You don't speak the same way, move the same way, or think the same way, because you've proven to yourself, quietly, repeatedly, that your word means something again. There's a moment every day, usually early, when your old habits try to pull you back. That's when the promise matters most. That's when you remind yourself, I don't break this. Not for excuses, not for moods, not because it's a bad day, because this promise isn't about the task, it's about who you are becoming. And the identity you're building isn't shaped by what you dream about doing someday. It's shaped by what you show up for today. The strength of your character isn't measured in noise, speed, or ambition. It's measured in consistency, in restraint, in the invisible integrity of keeping your word to yourself, even when it doesn't seem like it matters. But it does matter, because when you keep that one promise, you stop negotiating your standards. You stop falling into the pattern of performance and perfection. You begin to rise from something deeper. And that energy, the quiet, focused energy of a man who honors his own word, that's what carries into everything else. Your focus sharpens, your boundaries strengthen, your presence grows, and most of all, your belief in yourself starts to come back. Not through hype, not through motivation, but through evidence. You told yourself you'd do it, and you did. Again, and again, and again. It's not about chasing more, it's about building trust with less. It's about showing yourself that you don't need a perfect mood to stay consistent. You don't need someone watching to keep going. You don't need a new identity. You just need to return to one small promise and make it sacred. Because when you do that, your week shifts, your energy shifts, and eventually your entire life begins to shift with it. Not because you're trying harder, but because you're finally respecting the most important relationship you have, the one between your actions and your word. So make the promise, keep it, no matter what, and let that be the first proof that you're no longer chasing discipline, you've become it. 5. Cut one excuse that's been holding you back. Be honest with yourself. How many times have you whispered the same sentence, I'll start next week, or now's just not the right time? It feels reasonable, doesn't it? It feels like planning, like responsibility. But deep down, you know the truth. That excuse didn't start yesterday. It's been living with you for years, changing form, changing tone, but always there. And every time it shows up, it sounds convincing. You tell yourself you'll wait until work is less hectic, until you're less tired, until the moment feels more aligned. But somehow, the moment never comes. And if we're being real here, the problem isn't that you don't have time. The problem is you've given that excuse a permanent seat in your life. The human mind is brilliant at self-preservation. It doesn't like risk. It avoids discomfort. So when you're on the edge of action, when you're close to starting something meaningful, your brain offers you an escape. A sentence, a phrase, a reason that lets you back away without calling it fear. That's what excuses are. Fear of wearing a reasonable mask. And the most dangerous ones aren't loud, they're quiet. They show up in familiar language, in routines, in late-night negotiations you have with yourself about what can wait. And the more you repeat them, the more they feel like the truth. But the truth isn't what you've said the longest. It's what sets you free. If you want to begin your week with clarity, you can't carry old excuses into a new Monday. You can't expect focus if you've already left the back door open for doubt to walk in. And doubt, like clutter, expands to fill the space you give it. The only way to stop it is to cut the script. Not gently, not tomorrow, but now. You already know the one that's been following you. Maybe it's I don't have the energy. Maybe it's I'm just not ready. Maybe it's what's the point if I'll just fall off again? That one hits hardest, because it's not even about time or resources. It's about self-belief. You don't just doubt your schedule. You doubt your ability to be consistent. But here's the thing. Consistency isn't built on perfect days. It's built by refusing to let the excuse win again. You don't need to kill every excuse at once, just one. The one that shows up the most. The one you go to when you feel overwhelmed. Write it down, look it in the eye. Because until you do, it will continue to live under the surface, running the show, guiding your choices, shaping your outcomes. And you'll wonder why nothing changes, when the truth is, you've been protecting the very thought that's been holding you back. Progress isn't about talent, it's about honesty. It's about saying, I've been feeding this excuse and it's time to stop. You don't rise by avoiding discomfort. You rise by cutting the mental anchors that keep you stuck in cycles. That cycle might look like motivation on Sunday, delay on Monday, guilt by Wednesday, and complete resignation by Friday. Then you hit repeat. Not because you're lazy, but because you haven't challenged the thought that tells you it's okay to postpone purpose. And the longer you postpone, the heavier your self-respect becomes. You start to feel it every time you talk about change, but take no action. It creeps into your tone, your posture, your decisions, because your actions tell your mind whether your words are real. And that's why cutting an excuse is more than just a mindset shift. It's a turning point. It's a declaration that from now on, you won't abandon yourself when things get hard. You won't outsource your potential to comfort. You won't dress up fear and call it timing. You'll stand in front of the very sentence that's been costing you time, energy, clarity, and you'll say, no more. You don't have to be loud. You just have to be honest. And you have to follow it with action. Even something small, a walk, a page written, a 5-minute commitment done without negotiation. Because that act, however small, is the cut. That's what stops the loop. That's what rewires your default. Most people live in loops, and they call it normal. But you're here because you're ready for something different. You're not looking for hype. You're looking for peace. The kind that comes from knowing you followed through. And you won't find that peace by stacking more goals or reading another book. You'll find it by removing the thing that's been stealing your momentum. One lie, one phrase, one excuse that you've outgrown. And once you cut it, everything shifts. Your time starts to mean something again. Your energy starts to return. And most of all, your self-belief, quiet, steady, unshakable, starts to rebuild itself from the inside out. So this Monday, don't make 10 promises. Make one decision. Cut the excuse and walk forward without it. Because it never protected you. It only delayed the version of you that's been waiting to lead. 6. Move before your doubts take over. There are 2 versions of you that exist every Monday morning. One stays in bed too long, staring at the ceiling, picking up the phone, checking the weather, checking messages, scrolling through other people's lives while your own slips further into the background. That version thinks too much and moves too little. The other one gets up while the doubt is still quiet. He puts his feet on the floor, stretches his body, and steps into the day with intention before hesitation wakes up. The only difference between these 2 men is 5 minutes. 5 minutes of movement or 5 minutes of delay. But that tiny window, what you choose to do in that fragile space between waking and action, can set the entire tone of your week. Because doubt grows in stillness. Overthinking loves silence. But motion? Motion disrupts it. Motion breaks the spiral before it begins. You don't need a full workout. You don't need a cold plunge, a green smoothie, or a perfectly timed playlist. You need motion. A signal to your nervous system that you are in charge, not your fears. When you stay still, when you give your mind too long to negotiate, that's when the spiral starts. You begin listing all the things that could go wrong, all the ways you might fall short, all the reasons today might be just another repeat of the last. And none of that is real. Not yet. But because you haven't moved, your body believes the fear. You feed it with stillness. You nourish it with inactivity. But when you move, even just a little, your body takes back the steering wheel. You shift the state. You remind yourself that your thoughts are not commanders. They are passengers. And you get to choose which ones stay on board. This is why the discipline of movement isn't just about health. It's about control. It's about power. It's about self-leadership in the smallest moment of the day. Because once your body is moving, your emotions follow. Your clarity sharpens. Your reactions slow down. Your energy begins to return. You're no longer waking up into chaos. You're waking up with command. And that's what most men forget. Motivation doesn't start your week. Momentum does. And momentum only shows up if you make the first move before your mind has the chance to talk you out of it. You've probably lived both versions. You know how it feels to waste the morning, low energy, mental fog, guilt by noon. You've seen what happens when you let the phone lead instead of your feet. And you also know how it feels to rise early, even when you don't feel like it, and do the thing anyway. It's not glamorous, but it's powerful. Because no one claps for it, and no one needs to. That's the point. This isn't about performance. It's about reclaiming your identity from the noise, from the excuses, from the weakness that waits for the right mood. You don't train for motivation. You train for discipline. And discipline means you act even when your feelings say you're not ready. You act because you respect your time, because you know what the version of you that scrolls all morning will cost you. When you move first, you stop reacting all day. You set the pace instead of chasing it. You stop living in defense. Your body becomes the reminder that you're capable of more than you think, especially when you act before the self-doubt has a chance to build a case. And no, it doesn't mean your whole day will be easy, but it means you will walk into the hard moments with strength that was earned before the world even saw you. And that changes everything. Not just how you start the day, but how you respond to it. How you carry yourself through it. Because when you begin in motion, you're no longer trying to catch up. You're leading. There's something sacred about the first move. It's not loud. It's not dramatic. It's a man saying, I don't need to feel strong to act strong. And that mindset, when practiced daily, becomes your quiet armor. You begin the week not by consuming, but by choosing. You choose to move before fear has words. You choose action before anxiety builds arguments. You choose presence over paralysis. And in that first motion, your power returns. So tomorrow, when the alarm hits, when the bed feels heavy and the excuses start whispering, don't argue, don't negotiate, move. Even if it's just a walk, even if it's just 10 push-ups, even if it's just standing and breathing with intent. What matters is not the scale of the movement, it's the fact that you moved first. Because doubt hates momentum. And if you want to win the week, that win starts in silence, in sweat, in discipline. Not later. Not when it feels easier. But in the first 5 minutes, when most men give their power away, a few men quietly reclaim it. Be that man, move, and let the rest of the day respond to you. 7. Make the decision you've been avoiding all week. I don't know what your decision is. Maybe it's about your job. Maybe it's walking away from something that's already ended inside you. Maybe it's a conversation you've rehearsed 100 times in your mind, but can't bring yourself to say out loud. I don't need to know the details to know this much. It's been following you. In your thoughts, in your sleep, in that heavy, tired feeling you can't explain. You've been dragging it behind you like a weight. And no matter how much you distract yourself, no matter how many little tasks you check off, it doesn't go away. Because the longer you avoid a decision, the louder it becomes. Not in your calendar, but in your chest. Most people think that overwhelm comes from doing too much. But more often, it comes from not doing what we know we need to. From the decision that lingers in the background of our minds, quietly draining us. We feel scattered, not because we're incapable, but because we're living in avoidance. Avoidance of clarity, avoidance of discomfort, avoidance of a truth that once spoken will require change. And change is scary, not because we don't want it, but because we know it means we can't go back to pretending. That's why this matters. That's why this moment, this Monday, might not be about adding more to your week. It might be about finally facing what you've already known for a while. There's a cost to indecision, a mental tax you pay every day you postpone what's obvious. You walk through your week with a fog you can't name, a pressure you can't locate, and a tension in your chest that has nothing to do with your to-do list. It's the weight of delayed courage. And the longer you delay, the more energy it steals. You feel more tired, less focused, less confident, not because anything is wrong with you, but because your inner voice has been trying to lead, and you've been ignoring it. And when you ignore your own truth long enough, it stops knocking. It starts whispering in ways that affect everything else. Your energy, your work, your clarity, your peace. That's why some weeks aren't about effort, they're about honesty. And honesty requires silence. You have to pause long enough to ask the question, what decision am I still avoiding, and why? Is it fear of conflict, fear of failure, fear that once you say it, everything will change? Those are valid fears, but the pain of staying stuck is often greater than the discomfort of moving forward. You already know that. You've felt it in the form of restlessness, in the way you check your phone to escape, in the way your mind keeps circling back to the same thought. That's not a coincidence, that's a signal. And the longer you wait, the more that signal becomes noise. But you don't have to wait. You can decide now. You don't need to solve everything today. You don't need a perfect plan. You just need to make the first clear, committed decision. The one that says, I'm done dancing around this. I'm done spending another week half alive. I choose clarity, even if it's hard. And clarity always begins with finality, by saying, no more of this, or yes, it's time. That one sentence, spoken with certainty, is more powerful than 100 tasks done in avoidance. Because when you decide, you stop leaking energy. You stop living a split. You stop showing up halfway, and you begin to lead yourself again. Sometimes the decision is personal. Sometimes it's professional. But whatever it is, you already know it. It's the thing you think about when everything gets quiet. The thing you feel in your gut but haven't put into words. But now is the time, not next week, not after the holidays, not when the timing is perfect, because perfect never comes. And delay doesn't equal preparation, it just feeds fear. The life you want won't show up fully until you clear space for it. And space only opens up when you let go of the decisions you've already outgrown. So here's the moment. You're here. You're listening. You've carried this long enough. Decide. Not with emotion, but with conviction. And once you do, follow through. Quietly, steadily, without asking for permission or validation. That's how you reclaim the week. That's how you reclaim yourself. Not by doing more, but by finally doing the one thing you've been avoiding. And that single act of clarity will do more for your mindset than a month of scattered productivity. It will anchor your energy, it will sharpen your focus, and it will restore your peace, not because the decision was easy, but because you were finally brave enough to make it. 8. Say out loud what you will no longer accept. Go ahead. Say it, not in your head, not quietly in your journal. Say it out loud, because until your voice speaks it, you will keep living with it. That disrespect you've let slide, that low standard you've allowed to shape your relationships, your habits, and your boundaries, that job, that excuse, that toxic communication loop, your silence has been protecting your comfort, not your power. And there comes a moment, especially at the start of the week, when you don't need more motivation. You need a declaration. One that draws a clean line in the sand. One that tells your mind, this is no longer who we are. This is no longer what we allow. You see, we're taught to think that change starts in thought, but often it begins in the throat. The words we speak carry energy, especially when they name what we've been silently tolerating. And the truth is, you already know what needs to end. You've known for a while. It's that one dynamic that drains your emotional energy. It's the subtle disrespect you've let pass in the name of keeping peace. It's the standard you keep lowering in hopes that someone will meet you where you are. But they won't. They haven't. Because what you accept, you teach. And if your mouth never affirms your boundary, your world will never recognize it. Saying it out loud isn't for others. It's for you. It's for the identity inside you that's been waiting to rise, but can't find space in the clutter of your compromises. When you say, I will no longer accept, you are not just setting a boundary. You are setting a new rhythm, a new signal for your decisions, your habits, your tone. Your voice becomes a compass. It points away from what drains you and back to what strengthens you. That's not just self-respect, that's self-direction. And every great week begins with one. Now, this isn't about shouting or performance. This is about precision, clarity, truth. It's not for drama, it's for discipline. Whisper it if you must. Say it while walking. Say it in the mirror. Say it before you begin your Monday meetings. But say it. Because until your mind hears it from your lips, it will default to the old. And that's the trap most people fall into. They think rejecting something internally is enough. But your life doesn't change until your language does. Your old identity can't live in the same space as your new standards. Start small. It could be a sentence. It could be, I no longer accept being emotionally drained after every conversation. Or, I no longer accept being the last priority on my own list. Or simply, I no longer accept silence where I need to speak. Whatever it is, name it. Because what you don't name, you normalize. And what you normalize becomes identity. And once it becomes identity, it becomes a pattern that traps you longer than any outside enemy ever could. This is the week you flip that script. This is the morning you stop negotiating with what already feels wrong. You don't need to convince anyone. You don't need a 10-step action plan. You need one clear sentence and the inner courage to speak it, even if your voice shakes. Because here's what most people don't realize. The moment you say it, the moment you speak your new standard into the world, your decisions will start to align with it. You'll walk differently. You'll pause when something disrespects that standard. You'll feel discomfort around the old patterns, not because you're weak, but because you're no longer compatible with them. That's how transformation begins, not with external events, but with internal commands. So say it, not as a wish, not as a hope. Say it as a vow. I will no longer accept. Fill in the blank, and let that sentence burn quietly through the rest of your week. Let it inform your schedule. Let it shape your reactions. Let it protect your peace. Because the moment your voice matches your standards, the world around you has no choice but to respond. Your presence becomes sharper, your focus becomes clearer, and you stop reacting to life and start leading it. This is not about anger. It's about alignment. It's about living in a way that no longer tolerates emotional sabotage, hidden resentment, or quiet disrespect. It's about reclaiming your tone, not with noise, but with a grounded declaration that says, I'm not available for this anymore. That energy is powerful. And that's the energy that deserves to begin your week. Not just for today, but for every day that follows. Say it, seal it, then step into your Monday like a man who means it. Every week, you're given a decision, to drift or to direct. Most people wake up reacting. They grab their phones, check their messages, and surrender to chaos before even touching their purpose. But not you. Not anymore. Because when you reclaim your Monday, you don't just reset a routine, you rewire your mindset. You teach your thoughts to follow structure, not impulse. You replace excuses with actions, emotional chaos with calm control, and self-sabotage with quiet discipline. That's how real self-mastery begins, not with dramatic change, but with consistent clarity. This video wasn't just a motivational push. It's a reminder of your power. The power to set energetic boundaries, to detach from what drains you, and to lead your week with inner peace and unshakable focus. When you speak your new standard, when you act before doubt, when you write one promise and honor it, you stop reacting to life and start rewriting it. That's how strong people protect their peace stoically. Not loudly, but intentionally. What's the one promise you're making this week? What will you no longer accept? Drop your answer in the comments. Your voice might spark someone else's breakthrough. And if this video spoke to you, share it forward. Let someone else begin again, too.